بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد. To proceed, so where are we? What are we doing? We're doing the first comprehensive major legal maxim. Which one is this? الأمور بمقاصدها. Matters are judged by the intentions, by their intentions. Matters are judged by their intentions. And then we talked about al-Qaeda itself. We're now up to the branches of the Qaeda. And we've covered two of the branches of al-Qaeda, which is the first one. لا ثواب ولا عقاب إلا بنية. There is no reward or punishment without an intention. What is the second one? العبرة في العقود بالمقاصد والمعاني لا بالألفاظ والمباني. Consideration in contracts is given to intents and meanings, not words and forms. Intents and meanings, not words and forms. And how many subsidiary maxims did we say we will cover under الأمور بمقاصدها? 5. So we have 3 more to cover. One of them is وسائل الأمور الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد. الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد. The second one is اللفظ على نية اللافظ. Which means the intention of the speaker is given consideration in interpreting the speech. And the last one that we will cover is al-kitab kal-khitab, which is written communication takes the same ruling as verbal communication. Written communication takes the same ruling as verbal communication. Today, we will try to cover al-wasa'il laha أحكام المقاصد, and we will not cover the whole thing because we will leave out 2 subsidiary maxims under this, not subsidiary under the main one, but subsidiary under this. We will cover them next time, inshallah. But let's address الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد. الوسائل is the plural of وسيلة. And wasila would be the singular form of al-wasail, and wasila means what? The path to a desired goal. A path to a desired goal is a wasila, or, you know, simply in English, a means to a goal. A means to a goal. Maqasid would be sa'il laha ahkam. Al-maqasid. Ahkam would be the plural of hukm. Hukm is ruling. Al-maqasid, the plural of maqsad. Maqsad means that which is intended, objective, or that which is intended. So these are the 2 words that you will hear often. Wasila, that is singular of wasail, it means a means. And maqsad, that's singular of maqasid, and it means an objective or an end. So al-wasa'il laha ahkam al-maqasid could, if you want to bring it closer to Machiavellian, the ends justify the means, you would say here, the means take the same rulings as the ends. But if you want to push it a little bit farther, you would say the means, what? You'll say the means would take on the rulings of the objectives or something, just to make it look different. But anyway, it is different, as we will come to see. So السعدي رحمه الله said وسائل الأمور كالمقاصد واحكم بهذا الحكم للزوائد. وسائل الأمور, the means of different are like the ends or the objectives. واحكم بهذا الحكم, give the same ruling to الزوائد. The zawaid are the complements. Give the same ruling to the complements. So the complements are called متممات الأشياء. متممات الأشياء, you know, the things that complete different matters, or zawaid. Zawaid means additions, add-ons, additions, things that are complete. And let us basically Just to make the things a little bit clearer, let's give an example that I give in the book a little bit later than this. But the example is congregational prayer, Jum'ah, so that we avoid the controversy over the obligation of the other prayers. Jum'ah, wajib on you or not as men? Wajib, okay. What about taking the bus or walking or driving to the masjid? What is this? Wasila to the maqsad. The maqsad is to pray Jum'ah in the masjid. That is wajib. Wasila. So is it wajib on you to drive, to walk, to take the bus? Yes, it is wajib. Okay. What about going back home from the masjid? That's called the الزوائد. واحكم بهذا الحكم للزوائد. الزوائد متممات الأشياء. Because likely you need to go back home, right? So you came to the masjid, that's the objective. Coming to the masjid is the means. Returning from the masjid is the zawa'id, the additions, the complements, not complements, because it's not a means to Salat al-Jum'ah. You already prayed Jum'ah. So what is this? Why do we have to address this? Because should you be rewarded for this or not? Like, should you be rewarded for the trip back home or not? That's an important question. Is this like a reward-worthy trip? It should be. وَاحْكُمْ بِهَذَا الْحُكْمِ لِلزَّوَائِدِ. Give the same ruling to الزوائد. It should be. But this is in terms of reward and punishment. But we will come to talk about the ruling. The ruling. Is the ruling here wujub also? Like, do you have to go back home? You don't have to go back home. Do you have to leave the masjid? You don't have to necessarily leave the masjid. But in terms of reward and punishment, you know, if it is a complement to something haram, or it is a complement to something good or wajib, then in terms of reward and punishment, they'll take the same ruling as what they complemented. But in terms of the ruling itself, no, it's different. So complements are not the same, although the wording, the phrasing of Sheikh Sadi in this poetry, وَاحْكُمْ بِهَذَا الْحُكْمِ لِلزَّوَائِدِ, may say that complements take the same ruling as the objectives and the means, but not all the time. You know, when it comes to reward and punishment, yes, but not all the time when it comes to the rulings. Okay, so they had in the madhab different expressions of this. وسيلة المقصود تابعة للمقصود, that is Ibn al-Qayyim's expression. Imam Shams al-Din ibn al-Qayyim said the means to the objective follow the ruling of the objective. Imam ibn Rajab said وسائل المحرم ممنوعة. The means to a prohibited act are forbidden. The means to a prohibited act are forbidden. This is a little bit narrower in scope than the expression of Ibn al-Qayyim. The means to a prohibited act are forbidden, because this does not address the means to an obligatory act, a mandatory act, or the means to a recommended act. But the expression of Ibn al-Qayyim addresses all of them. You know, means to an objective, take the same ruling as the objective. This objective could be halal, haram, wajib, mustahab, makruh, whatever it is. The means to it, take the ruling of that objective. Now, so I want you now to ask yourself, how is this different from the ends justify the means? How is that different from the ends justify the means? If the means take on the same rulings as the ends, how is that different from the ends justify the mean? Is that a different phrasing for the ends justify the means? No, it's not. Two factors here. Two factors that will separate this from the ends justify the means. Keep in mind, Machiavelli may be innocent of the popular understanding of this particular notion. yes, certainly he said that, but, you know, how did he understand it may not be the way it is, you know, in public consciousness, the same, you know, understanding in public consciousness. So he may be innocent. The man himself, Machiavelli, may be innocent of the, like, the very bad understanding of the ends justify the means. So we're not bashing Machiavelli here. This is not our subject of discussion. But the popular understanding of the ends justify the means, is it like our rule here, الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد, or the means take on the rulings of the ends? No. Two things that are extremely important here. One, which objectives are we talking about? Two, which means are we talking about? Which means and which objectives? So the objectives in Islam are basically designated, known, well delineated. So the ends justify the means. The ends are themselves the Islamic objectives that are driven by the Islamic value system. Therefore, the ends do not necessarily mean they stay in control. You know, like Machiavelli, he wrote the Prince, or his famous book, The Prince or the Al-Amir, and he was trying to give advice to people in charge, to good people in charge. How could you stay in control? How could you stay in control? So the ends justify the means is not, or the ends for us are the ones that are designated by the Sharia. They are not basically whatever ends you have in your mind, not your ends, the Sharia's ends, not your objectives, the Sharia's objectives. That's the first distinction between this and the Machiavellian notion of the ends justify the means. Now, what is the second difference between الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد, means take on the rulings of the ends, and the ends justify the means? The second is the means that we're talking about here are which means? The means that do not have a legal value assigned to them by the Sharia. The means that have a legal value assigned to them by the Sharia independently. They don't need to follow the ends here because they have an independent legal value assigned to it by the Sharia. So, theft for charitable causes. Theft for charitable causes. The ends justify the means would say, yes, no problem. الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد, الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد, or the means take on the rulings of the ends, will say no. Theft has an independent ruling in the Sharia. Theft has an independent ruling in the Sharia. So here, the qaida does not apply. The qaida applies when the means do not have a ruling designated to them by the Sharia, or they fall under the mubah in general. So that's another important distinction. The objectives of the Sharia, not the ends, not your personal ends or objectives, and the means are the actions that do not have a value assigned to them, a legal value assigned to them by the Sharia. These are the actions that will take on the ruling of, these are the means that will take on the rulings of the ends. Now, you may say, so theft for charitable causes is not acceptable in the Sharia. But you may say that sometimes we can tolerate some evil for a greater good. Does that, am I saying that we can't tolerate any evil for a greater good by saying that the means that we're talking about here are the ones that don't have a value assigned to them by the Sharia? No, I'm not saying this, but this will be a different discussion, a different discussion. The discussion there will be, you know, the idea of أخف الضررين أقل الشرين, the lesser of the two evils, that the Sharia does consider. If you have to choose between two evils, you choose the lesser of the two evils. And Imam Taqiyuddin ibn Taymiyyah, you know, has a fasl or a chapter called فصل الجامع في تعارض الحسنات أو السيئات أو هما جميعا, you know, I think so. فصل الجامع في تعارض الحسنات أو السيئات أو هما جميعا. And this is something that, which means what? It means a sort of a chapter, a comprehensive chapter on the conflict between hasanat, good and evil, the conflict between good and evil. So when they are intermixed, intertwined, good and evil, and you can't separate them, what do you do in this case? The lesser of the two evils, and certainly you've been hearing the lesser of the two evils for quite some time nowadays, and you will continue until the election day. But so that's the concept of the lesser of the two evils. So we're not addressing this concept now, we will address it later. Now, so which means, so the means that we're talking about, one, are the means that have not been assigned a legal value. The means that we're talking about here in this qaida are the means that lead to the ends predominantly, not rarely, and not consistently. The means that lead to the ends predominantly, غالباً, not rarely, because rarely you will apply la ibrata lil-nadir. So no consideration is given to that which is rare. No consideration is given to that which is rare. Consistently, if the means lead to the ends consistently, that is not this qaida either. Although it's related, although it is related, but what are the qaidas that will be invoked if the means consistently lead to the ends, like it's cause and effect? ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب وما لا يجتنب الحرام إلا باجتنابه فهو حرام. ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. Okay, that which, you know, يتم means completed. الواجب is that which is mandatory, except by it is wajib. That which the mandatory cannot be completed except through it or by it is mandatory. That which is necessary for the fulfillment of an obligation is in itself obligatory. That which is necessary for the fulfillment of an obligation is in itself obligatory. So when the means lead to the ends rarely, we dismiss that, we disregard that, la ibrata lin-nadir. When the means lead to the ends consistently, we invoke this qaida. So the means here become part of the, like they like clearly and totally take the ruling of the ends because they are necessary for the fulfillment of the obligation. And the other qaida is ما لا يتم اجتناب الحرام إلا باجتنابه. I hope you guys can read my handwriting. You know, I've always had a problem with this, and like I never had good handwriting in any language. So anyway, but ما لا يتم اجتناب الحرام إلا باجتنابه فهو حرام, which is the opposite of this. So if something is whatever is necessary for the fulfillment of an obligation is an obligatory, whatever a haram cannot be avoided except by avoiding it, haram. if haram cannot be avoided except by avoiding this, this is haram. You know, the opposite of this one. So these, then, which means are we talking about الوسائل لا أحكام المقاصد, the means take on the rulings of the ends, the means that have not been assigned the value by the Sharia, and the means that predominantly lead to the ends. The means that rarely lead to the ends are dismissed. The means that consistently lead to the ends belong to different Qawaaid that are related to this qaida. Okay. These two Qawaaid that we just mentioned, by the way, are widely accepted by all people, even the people who don't necessarily uphold the concept of sadd al-dhara'i, or blocking the means to evil and opening the means to good. So sadd al-dhara'i, blocking the means to evil, which mazahib take this to heart more? Malikis and Hanbalis. Hanafis and Shafi'is, a little bit less than the Malikis and Hanbalis. Does any madhab completely dismiss and disregard this in application? No. Even if they say in theory that it is that they don't uphold this qaida, which is sadd al-dhara'i, blocking the means to evil, they will still application to some extent, but not to all the way like the Malikis and Hanbalis, who uphold it in theory and therefore will certainly reflect on their applications a little bit more than the Hanafis and the Shafi'is. Yet the Hanafis and Shafi'is do not contest the ruling of ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب, or ما لا يتم اجتناب الحرام إلا باجتنابه فهو حرام, because these are no-brainers. You know, these are no-brainers. If, so ما لا يتم اجتناب الواجب إلا به فهو واجب would be invoked when? Like when you wash your face, you have to wash your face from, that line between the hair and the forehead. So from that line, you will need to basically wash some of the hair in the front, unless but for most people who have, so you will by necessity wash some of the hair in the front to make sure that you have thoroughly washed your face, to make sure that you've covered all the face. That is ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. If it is wajib for you to wash the entire face, then washing a little bit of the hair with that is wajib, because you need to do that to basically ascertain that you have washed your face completely, the entire face. Okay, so the Hanafis and Shafi'is who contest the blocking the means or sadd al-dhara'i in theory would accept these Qawaaid. So these Qawaaid are widely accepted. That which is necessary for the fulfillment of a wajib is wajib. Okay. Ibn al-Qayyim has a detailed investigation on the subject under sadd al-dhara'i, and he says, and you will notice Ibn al-Qayyim certainly is, Imam Shamsuddin was to a great extent influenced by Imam Taqiyuddin in this. You will find that Imam Taqiyuddin was concerned about, the religiosity that is prohibitive only, a religiosity that basically provides restraints only, not motivation, not mobility. So he emphasized the importance of opening the means to good. He wanted to say that this goes two ways. It is not only that al-wasila ila al-haram mamnu'a, or the means to haram should be prohibited we should also emphasize that the means to a wajib should be wajib. The means to something recommended should be recommended, because religion provides guidelines, guardrails, restraints. That's one of the functions of religion, and it's important, an important function, that structure, and basically the guardrails. But if religion only provides guardrails without energy, without mobilizing, motivating the people, then the guardrails will you'll just stay where you are. Like, there are guardrails, but you're not moving. So it is important for the religion to provide the guardrails and the energy that motivates and mobilizes people. So when you focus on وسائل المحرمات ممنوعة, which is the means to haram are prohibited, and you don't bring into the picture that the means to obligations are obligatory, the means to sunan and mustahabbat are mustahab themselves, then you're basically accentuating that restrictive function of the deen and sidelining the motivating function of the deen. So Imam Ibn al-Qayyim further categorizes the types of means into 4 categories. He said, what are the 4 categories? The means, so means that are designed to lead to haram, to fasad or corruption, such as drinking wine. Drinking wine in and of itself is not a problem. Like, what's the problem with drinking wine? It leads to intoxication. It leads to intoxication. That's the problem, intoxication. The act of drinking itself, seems very innocuous. Okay. 2, 3, 4. On the opposite side, you have means that predominantly lead to certain objectives and their benefit outweighs the harm. Predominantly lead to certain objectives. They are mubah themselves, they are permissible, they lead to certain objectives, and the benefit outweighs the harm. And then number 3, the harm outweighs the benefit. And number 2, they were intended to cause corruption. So intended, they may not be haram in and of themselves, but intended to cause corruption. Here, the harm outweighs the benefit. Give examples. Designed to lead to haram, they just lead to haram by necessity. Drinking wine and intoxication. Intended to lead to something haram, zawaj al-tahleel. Zawaj, to make a woman halal for the previous wife. This is zawaj. You could do it perfectly right. You bring in the 2 witnesses, you bring in you do the ijab and qabul, everything, the wali, everything, perfectly right. But it's intended to lead to corruption, tahleel. It's not meant to be a true marriage. And certain types of bay'ah that lead to riba and things of that nature. What is a means that the harm outweighs the benefit? The means here, the means would be haram by agreement. Here, means would be halal by agreement. The difference is on these 2. That example here is tahleel. What is a good example on number 3? Number 3, the harm outweighs the benefit. To basically to curse the gods or to insult the gods of the polytheists and disbelievers. Certainly there are certain gods that we don't insult by nature. Like Jesus, peace be upon him, some people consider him a god, but Jesus is a great prophet and messenger. So we don't stay away from, but let us say someone who worships whatever, like stones and anything. You don't insult their gods in front of them so that lest they would insult our God. ولا تسبوا الذين يدعون من دون الله فيسبوا الله عدوا من غير علم. So don't basically insult those they invoke besides Allah, lest they insult Allah in hostility and without knowledge. So that would be here something permissible in and of itself, because if you talk about these stones and they are you can insult them, stones. Something permissible in and of itself, but the harm outweighs the benefit. Therefore, Imam Ibn al-Qayyim will conclude that these two should be haram as well. These two should be haram as well. This is haram, this is haram. Certainly, it depends on, or maybe we should say that they are on the side of avoidance, because it depends on how much the harm outweighs the benefit here and how certain the harm is. So it may be makruh, it may be haram, based on the amount of the harm, the degree of the harm that may ensue from this wasila, the degree of the harm that may ensue from this wasila. So what is he trying to tell you here? He's trying to tell you that a wasila that is intended to lead to haram is haram. A wasila that leads to haram all the time, of course, haram. That's number one. A wasila that is intended, that's number two, that is intended to lead to haram is haram. A wasila that predominantly leads to haram, and the harm outweighs the benefit, then that is number three, just like, insulting the gods of the polytheists, and that should be haram as well, or should be avoided as well. The only wasila that we're talking about is a wasila that predominantly lead to a good outcome where the benefit outweighs the harm. A wasila that predominantly leads to a good outcome where the benefit outweighs the harm. So he concludes by saying the Sharia has come with the allowance, recommendation, or obligation of this fourth category. The fourth category predominantly leads to a good outcome where the benefit outweighs the harm. The fourth category, depending on the degree of its benefit. So it may be wajib, it may be mustahab, depending on the degree of its benefit. It has prohibited the first category. First was prohibited. Either by dislike or outright prohibition. Either by dislike or outright prohibition. It depends on whether it leads something makruh or it leads something haram. Depending on the degree of its harm. The debate remains regarding the second and the third categories. Has the Sharia permitted them or has it prohibited them? So he ultimately considers or concludes that the Sharia prohibits the second and third categories. And he basically cites وَلَا تَسُبُّوا الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ فَيَسُبُّوا اللَّهَ عَدْوًا مِنْ غَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. He cites وَلَا يَضْرِبْنَ بِأَرْجُلِهِنَّ لِيُعْلَمَ مَا يُخْفِينَ مِنْ زِينَتِهِنَّ, which means that they shouldn't stamp their feet so that their concealed adornments become apparent, or, where they used to wear the bracelets, the ankle bracelets, and then they stamp their feet because they used to wear many of them. So when they stamped their feet, they would bang against each other and make a sound. So people would know that they're wearing many ankle bracelets. They used to be made of gold. So showing off, like the gold ankle bracelets that you're wearing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that they shouldn't stamp their feet so that whatever adornment they have concealed does not become apparent. Okay. Um, so here, stamping their feet is not in and of itself a problem, right? You know, you can walk whichever way you want. Like, so it's mubah to walk like this. Like, if I want to walk like this, it's up to me. I mean, it's ridiculous, but it's up to me. But if you're doing this, basically to let people know you're like what you're wearing that's covered, then that's a problem. Now, so know that this issue extends beyond merely blocking the means to evil, because it includes also opening the means to that which is good. Whatever is necessary for the fulfillment of an obligation is itself obligatory. So regarding the compliments, we said, you know, وَاحْكُمْ بِهَذَا الْحُكْمِ لِلزَّوَائِدِ, give the same rulings to the compliments. So Jum'ah, Tila, going back from Jum'ah is the complement, متممات الأشياء or الزوائد. الزوائد متممات الأشياء. So here, al-maqsad, the objective or the end, here the driving to the masjid, going back from the masjid is mutammim. We said that there is a difference between reward and punishment and the ruling. When it comes to reward and punishment, tammim or the za'id will take on the same basically as the end. So you will be rewarded for, you know, your walk back from the masjid. But is that walk back from the masjid obligatory? No. And there are several examples that I give there. Someone who's in a state of ihram, for instance, and he's wearing, you know, like fitted clothing. If he takes off the clothes, that very act itself involves, you know, it is a means to avoidance of haram. But while he's doing this act, is he mutalabbis bil haram? As he does this act, is he still involved in haram or not? But there are other issues that may be a little bit more confusing. So I'm not going to discuss them here. You read them in the, you know, whatever the writings that I have sent you. That could be a little bit more confusing whether they are part of the haram or necessary for the avoidance of the haram. Okay, so some applications from the madhab for this qaida, al-wasa'il laha ahkam al-maqasid, or the means take on the rulings of the ends or objectives. From the book al-Iqna', legal stratagems والحيل التي تحرم حلالا أو تحلل حراما كلها محرمة. So legal stratagems are all forbidden. So one who lends something to another and then sells him a commodity for more than its value, or buys a commodity from him for less than its value. So I basically, and keep in mind, this is not two aqds in one aqd. These are separate uqud. But we like had this aqd and that aqd. One aqd is a loan contract, I lend you money, and then I tell you, why don't you sell me your iPhone for $10? Then that's a stratagem, a legal stratagem. That's a hila for me to benefit from loaning you money by buying an item from you for less. So now, is this aqd halal? Halal. You know, why don't you give me your iPhone for $100? Let's say the value of the iPhone is $160. Why don't you give me your iPhone for $100? Is this aqd halal? of course it's halal. But in light of the other transaction between us, which is a loan transaction, it becomes a haram because it becomes a hila, a deceptive trick or a legal stratagem to get around the prohibition of benefiting from loans. Okay, and so in al-Rawd al-Nadi, it says, if a group of rebels, this is how we should have a good understanding of the qaida. If a group of rebels against the imam with a valid interpretation, a group of rebels, they go against the imam, they rebel against the imam with a valid interpretation. Keep in mind that they always had this distinction between rebelling with a valid interpretation and rebelling without a valid interpretation. They will be treated differently. But because things are complicated in life, and the rebels who are forbidden from rebelling, they are forbidden from rebelling, they may have a valid interpretation. They may have a point. They may have a point. They're still prohibited from rebelling, but they may have a point. So it says, if a group of rebels, or if a group rebels against the imam with a valid interpretation, the imam is obligated to communicate with them, asking about their grievances. He's also obligated to remove their misapprehensions or shubuhat so that they may return to the truth. And he's obligated to address any injustice they claim, as this is a means to the reconciliation commanded by the Sharia. So here, what is the objective? The objective is to end this fitna. So all the means to end the fitna must be sought. The imam, which is Imam al-Adl, which is the rightful ruler, is obligated to reach out to them, to try to address their grievances, to try to basically address any form of injustice they claim that is true, to try to answer their misapprehensions or clarify their misapprehensions. All of this is wajib on the rightful ruler, Imam al-Adl. Why? Because if the end is, or the objective is to end the fitna and the civil strife or the rebellion, then these are all means to ending the fitna. Certainly, some room is given to the imam to decide what is best at different, so it's not like a cleric will be standing by the imam directing him. No, the imam will have room to, judge what is best in different circumstances and times. But in general, he's basically required to do all the above. In Daqa'iq al-Nuha, which is a book, Sharh al-Muntaha, it says, it talks about al-Hammam. It talks about al-Hammam, and it's a complicated issue. The bathhouse, Hammam, the bathhouse. Hammam is not the restroom, is not, lavatory. It's the bathhouse. So what's the deal with al-Hammam? Because al-Hammam is confusing. You have lots of reports about, al-Hammam being terrible, al-Hammam being good. What a good place is al-Hammam, what a terrible place is al-Hammam. So what is the deal with al-Hammam? So someone like Shamsuddin ibn al-Qayyim said, there are no reports whatsoever, there are no good reports, sound reports whatsoever about al-Hammam, and it is very unlikely that the Prophet has ever seen one. Very unlikely that the Prophet has ever seen one with his own eyes. There used to be no bathhouses there. So, and keep in mind that here is what you may say. You may say, that the Prophet ﷺ allowed salah in the entire, all the land is masjid, except al-Maqbara wal-Hammam, except the graveyard and al-Hammam, the bathhouse. And this hadith has been authenticated by many. You may say that, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir, fala yudkhilanna halilatahu al-Hammam." he who believes in Allah and the hereafter should not allow his wife to enter al-hammam. So the bathhouse, and this has been authenticated by several scholars. But keep in mind that the fact that it's authenticated does not necessarily mean that the discussion is over, because it could be authenticated by some scholars and not considered authentic by other scholars. And there is a difference between, the ways of the mutaqaddimin and the ways of the mutaakhirin in authentication of reports. The ways of the mutaakhirin, or the latter generations, in authentication of reports is more basically mechanical than the ways of the mutaqaddimin. Mechanical in the sense of they have certain rules and principles that they apply like a little bit more rigidly than in mutaqaddimin. Because for the mutaqaddimin, the earlier generations, they are in the midst of it. So like someone like al-Bukhari can accept a certain ahadith from one person and not others from the same person, because he would know that he would be entrusted with these, not these. He would be entrusted reporting from this scholar, not from this scholar. So it is more sort of nuanced. But for the latter generations, it is, that checks, the check this box, check this box, check this box. So it's a little bit different. Anyway, that's not taken away from the other scholars whatsoever. We need them. We love them. We appreciate them. We're so grateful to have them. But that is a big difference between earlier and latter scholars. The earlier ones, they had more sort of nuanced approach to the process of authentication than the latter ones. We need both. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them all mercy. So the hammam issue is complicated. The hammam issue is complicated. However, for people who like synthesis and reconciliation, and they don't get frazzled by the conflicting reports, they can make something out of it. So what do you make out of it? Here is what we made in the madhab out of it. So in terms of men in particular, he would say that it is permissible according to an explicit narration to enter al-hammam with two conditions. He's covered and there is no fear of falling into something prohibited. Now, no fear of falling into something prohibited. No fear of falling into something prohibited. Some fear of falling into something prohibited. He knows he will fall into something prohibited. Permissible, disliked, prohibited. Prohibited. So if there is no fear, some fear, he knows he will fall into something prohibited. Like that's certainty that he will fall into something prohibited. So that would be prohibited. If there is fear, concern, but it's not certainty, that would be disliked. If there is no fear, that would be permissible. And that's according to Daqa'iq al-Nuha here. Now, the issue of hammam for sisters. If the issue here at the end of the day is what? Is knowing whether you will fall into something forbidden or not. For sisters, because the covering of the awra is has like a greater importance, then it would be more emphatically observed. These guidelines, they would be more emphatically observed. But let us assume that there is a hammam for the sisters where, it is all that's run by sisters only, and there is no way, like they have every arrangement to avoid basically inkishaf al-awrat and things of that nature. The awra being shown or uncovered in front of men, or the awra that is to be hidden from women is uncovered in front of women. And the awra that is to be hidden from women is a long discussion that we don't need to get into now, but it may be very minimal in many of the madhab. So then in this case, if we're not using the hadith that would prohibit women from going to the bathroom, or if you want to use this hadith and reconcile it with other hadith, that encourage going to bathhouses, I'm sorry, but not bathroom, bathhouses. So what do you do out of this? You say that it is all based on al-wasa'il la ahkam al-maqasid. And if I don't have fear at the end of the day that there will be inkishaf awrat, then hammam, like a group of women gathering inside a bathhouse that is monitored and observed by women only, and covering their awra in front of each other, there is no reason there to prohibit it, except, that you may invoke that a woman should not take her clothes off, outside of her house. Is this still contingent upon inkishaf al-awra in front of ajnabi? What if a woman is visiting on a friend of hers and wanted to breastfeed? Can she do this in a private room in front of the host or another of the host? But can she do that? I think that there is room for her to do that. Next, in Kashaf al-Qana, it says, and hunting for mere amusement is disliked because it's frivolous. However, if hunting involves injustice towards others, such as encroaching on their crops or property, then it is haram. Finally, legal stratagems used to obtain rightful claims are permissible. Allah mentioned the stratagem of Yusuf to bring his brother to him. So Yusuf alayhi salam put the measuring cup into the mata' of his, or the whatever the stuff, his brother's stuff, or mata', and then searched for it and found it. Is this hila or not? Is this tricking or not? It is a hila. It's a trick that Yusuf alayhi salam employed. Was that permissible or not? Yeah, it was permissible. Does it apply to us? Would it be permissible to us? It depends on if you believe Shara man qablana is Shara lana, or the legislations for those before us applies to us. And in our madhab, and according to majority, they apply. Shafi'is don't consider it applicable. But in our madhab, if Shara man qablana was reported to us through our book in a context of thana, not in a context of condemnation, but in a context of thana, in a context of approval, then it applies to us. The legislations before us for the Yahud and the Nasara and so on apply to us if they were reported to us in a context of thana or approval, and there is nothing in our deen to contravene that or to oppose that. Okay, so he says here, he mentions here that legal stratagems used to obtain rightful claims are permissible, and he talks about Yusuf alayhi salam and what he did. And then, so I will basically share with you something in the madhab that I will trust your religiosity to understand it properly and to not abuse it. In our madhab, lying is always permissible if it leads to a good objective. So, you know, the issue here is the, that we've talked about before is that a good objective, we said that there are two differences between الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد, the means take on the rulings of the ends, and the ends justify the means. What are these two? Our objectives are the Sharia objectives, and the means should not be assigned a legal value. Now, we will basically make an exception here. The idea of lying itself does not cause, is not in and of itself inherently forbidden. But it depends on why you're lying. Lying by default is forbidden. By default is forbidden. But if the lying will get you out, let us take this Kantian sort of, you know, the categorical imperatives of Kant or Kant, whichever way they say it. I hear it both ways. But Immanuel Kant, the categorical imperatives of Immanuel Kant. So if someone is hiding in your house, like a fugitive, or not a fugitive, like an innocent man is hiding in your house, and a tyrant comes after them, and you come out from the house, and you speak to the tyrant. The tyrant tells you, is X, Y, or Z hiding in your house? Is XYZ inside? Then what do you say to the tyrant? What does Kant say here? You have to say the truth according to Kant, because he believes in CI, categorical imperatives. So his ethics, you know, is the ethics of categorical imperatives. Now, whether it's categorical imperatives or utilitarian ethics, if it is not anchored in the divine lawgiver, then they are meaningless. But let us basically address the issue in terms of utilitarian versus categorical imperatives. Utilitarian ethics will tell you, no, lie. You know, this is, you know, this tyrant, if he basically is able to catch that innocent man, will kill him. So you're saying the truth here will lead to a great evil. So lie. Okay, does Islam tell you lie? You know, according to our, yes, of course, Islam will tell you lie here. But according to our madhab, is lying always permissible in something like this, or lying is permissible only if ambiguity and equivocation will not work? So lying is permissible if ambiguity and equivocation will not work, according to the dominant view, even though Abu al-Khattab, a great Hanbali scholar, said that in this case, lying would be permissible, even if equivocation and ambiguity would work. Even if equivocation and ambiguity would work. Because here you're lying to save us a life. You're lying to save a life. So the end here clearly justifies the means. So it says here, Ibn al-Jawzi said, every praiseworthy and good objective that can only be attained through lying is permissible. It's also mentioned in al-Haj that it is permissible for a person to lie about themselves or others if no harm is caused, and if the lie is necessary to attain the right. If the lie is necessary to attain their right. Like, you know, so you are arrested by like a tyrannical sort of law enforcement, whatever agency. We have this, you know, like state security agencies in our countries that use basically torture to interrogate people. and basically to tell on other people that their acquaintances and stuff like this. In this case, and they may ask you about your family members, are you allowed to lie? He will say, yes, you're allowed to lie. To avoid injustice or to attain your right. And then he mentioned that Sulaiman deceived one of the two women. So the Sulaiman said, let's split the child between the both of you. When two women disputed over one child, Sulaiman said, let us split the child. That's a deceptive trick. Yusuf used the deceptive trick. Sulaiman is using a deceptive. He will never split the child. But he deceived one of the two women by proposing to split the child in half, which led him to discovering the true mother. So it includes that in al-Adab al-Shar'iyya by Ibn Muflih, it states that whenever it's possible to use ambiguity or equivocation instead of lying or outright lying, lying becomes prohibited. Lying becomes prohibited. This is actually explicitly stated by many scholars in the madhab, that lying becomes prohibited when equivocation and ambiguity work. When equivocation and ambiguity work. So when will lying be allowed? He does mention that Abu al-Khattab would permit lying even in a condition like this. So in certain cases, if you feel equivocation will lead to evil, or ambiguity will lead to evil, then lying would be permissible. But if you're not afraid and you can use equivocation, or the matter itself does not warrant lying, like you have like a guest who's so like sa'il, like a guest who like so annoying that comes at bad times, knocks on your door, and at bad times. If your daughter or son are able to send them away without lying, they should do that. They are allowed to use equivocation or ambiguity, basically to hint to him, infer to him that you're not present without lying. So here, the issue is how necessary is lying to avoid something evil or to bring about something necessary or something that is obligatory. If it is necessary, then go ahead. If it is not necessary, or you can use equivocation, ta'rid, or ambiguity, then you must not lie. You must avoid lying because, in our deen, إن الصدق يهدي إلى البر وإن البر يهدي إلى الجنة وما زال الرجل يصدق ويتحرى الصدق حتى يكتب عند الله صدوقا الكذب يهدي إلى الفجور وإن الفجور يهدي إلى النار وإن الرجل ما زال يتحرى الكذب حتى يكتب عند الله كذابا. So that truthfulness leads to goodness, goodness leads to paradise, and a man will continue to uphold truthfulness or to be truthful until he is written, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Allah's records. He will be written as something that is consistently truthful, and a man will continue to lie, and he said lying leads to wickedness, wickedness leads to the hellfire, and a man will continue to lie and pursue like untruths until he is written with Allah, or in his records as kadhab, or someone who's a consistent liar, So, you avoid lying at all costs. However, it may be permissible in certain circumstances where a clear right cannot be attained without it, or a clear evil cannot be avoided without it. And whenever you can use ambiguity and equivocation, you must use ambiguity and equivocation to avoid lying. That brings us to the end of this discussion. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم.